Hello. Welcome to the Kensington Corner. I am Tom.
And I'm Jeff.
As usual, we're back. We're going to be talking today a little bit about friendships, bromances, and why that is healthy.
Am I supposed to talk now?
You are. I was waiting for you to come on in with it.
Oh, all right. Well, I guess let's get this kicked off. So, one of the things you and I have talked about quite a bit here, since you and I became friends, which has been actually a
while now.
Well, but I mean, in the big scheme of things, it's been a relatively short amount of time. What, about not even 8 months? About 8 months now?
Yeah, about 8 months.
Yeah, about 8 months. So that's, if my math is correct, that's 2/3 of a year.
It was love at first sight.
I don't know about that. That might be a little bit extreme, but no. One of the things we get back to is, the whole idea of male friendship and why it's important. Why a lot of people don't actually seem to have it in a real healthy way.
No, and I think a lot of it becomes one thing that I always talk about a lot is the fragility of the male psyche. And there's a want or need from most men that we know as they get older. They have to rely on female companionship to really dictate their life and really dictate what they're going through. And a lot of males do not have healthy friendships, or as what I jokingly call bromances. They don't have that capability to have emotions and feelings and affection for another man.
Well, and you make a really good point, and I'll kind of backtrack just a little bit and say that, you and I were really in a lot of ways kind of just predisposed to be friends.
Right. Yeah,
when you look at kind of the environment we're in, we're older. We both have, I have a little military experience. You have a lot of military experience. Right. And, and just kind of the stage we're at in our life compared to our peer group, that it was just kind of natural that you and I kind of, gravitated towards each other.
Right. But I think there are other 30-plus-year-olds at the university that you and I don't have things in common.
A bunch of weirdos.
I think that you and I it was a perfect storm. We did have that background in common, but we could have easily hung out one time and been like, oh yeah, no, this is not going to work out.
Yeah. Well, and one thing, I don't really mean to backtrack to our first episode, but one thing I think that really has really made our friendship very strong is that, both you and I have been very open about, kind of our mental health, the state of our mental health, our mental health history. And we kind of have that, we kind of have that shared bond as well. And, but, I think that points out a really good aspect, is that, I think when you, especially around your male friends, it's really not, it's not cool. It's not even socially acceptable in some ways to kind of show those vulnerabilities.
No, it's not. In a big hot word, a big what do you call that? Not a keyword, but
buzzword. A
buzzword. Thank you. That people use in today's society is male toxicity. It's huge. And not that I believe that there's this overwhelming male toxicity, but what I do believe is that there is a certain label put on what a male should be. And what happens when that does happen is you take things and you have this strong character, which you and I are both strong men, both strong-willed, intelligent men. And what happens when you do that is that men are supposed to have zero weaknesses, no weaknesses, which isn't true. We know that's not true.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, and anybody that says otherwise is they're either really good at hiding it or they're lying.
Right, exactly. And so there becomes a male ego, the egotistical toxicity that people are playing on now. And what happens when you do that is that there are there are things about the male ego that are toxic, but there are things about the female ego that are toxic. Human beings are toxic by nature in some capacity.
In a lot of ways.
In a lot of ways, yes. Very primal, very, very toxic, no matter which way. So I won't go as far as saying there's a war on male toxicity, because I do not believe that. But I do believe there are things about males that do need to change in society. I think you and I are the complete opposite when we talk about that. We don't talk about you and I have a very healthy friendship, I would say. We have a very healthy competition friendship. I think that you push me to be the best person I can be, and I think I push you to be the best person you can be. But I don't think that anything you and I do one-on-one is toxic.
No, it's very supportive. And I mean, case in point, we actually took a pretty big break in recording some episodes, because I was really actually going through I had a really bad week and kind of was in a bad state of mind. And, Tom was really supportive of me, and, he, let me know that, hey, this thing, could get put on the back burner. There's more important things to worry about. And, I feel like that's the one thing, like, I feel is, like, basically your priorities are in the right place. And that's really what helps, being supportive of me when I go through my struggles, my issues, whatever they may be, whether it's, school or, my physical health, my mental health, whatever the case may be.
No, I agree. I think that they're on any surface when you look at things. I think that, if you start putting the materialistic, the idealistic or ideology, you start putting things that are above human nature. If you're making them more important than what someone's going through, I fully believe that you've lost track of who you truly are. If someone is struggling through something, or you have a friend that's going through something, you see this quite often with a lot of different things. People don't have the sincerity or the, it's kind of like a care kind of thing. They don't have the ability, the empathy is what I was looking for. They don't have the empathy to really look at another human and say, man, this person is struggling. It needs to be about them. There needs to be a care aspect to this. It's about me. And that's why a lot of friendships don't work out.
Well, I absolutely agree with that. But there's another side to that, is that, and I've been very guilty of this in, a lot of basically all my relationships is, I think especially as guys, especially, I guess I think of just kind of the way I was raised, like, you're just kind of supposed to deal with it,
Right. Yeah.
And a lot of times I've not been very forthright about, the things that are not going well in my life. You kind of tend to bury those and just kind of pretend, hey, everything's okay. And
that's life, I think.
No, that is life. But I mean, it's a sort of thing, like, when you're in that sort of place, your actions can't always be consistent with, what you're saying,
Agreed.
When you're saying everything's fine, but I'm pissy, I'm depressed, I'm angry. I think in some ways you kind of have to, at least if you put that out there, you can kind of justify, I guess, where you're coming from.
Right. Well, it gives the person another. Sorry, we're drinking on some Deschutes IPA, fresh squeezed. So it gives the person the ability, though, when you do put things out there like that, it gives the person the ability to say, man, this person's being authentic. They're being a human being towards me. So I think it gives a different perspective for how to treat people. The problem with where we live at now is a lot of friendships are, and we've hit on this in probably the last 2 podcasts that we've done, social media. You're living an inauthentic life, and your reactions then are based on what you think that person's going through. Like if I throw up a pic, like, me very, very well, and when I'm having shitty days and when I'm not. But let's say in the middle of one of my shitty days, I throw up a picture with this great Instagram caption, right?
Yeah.
You already know that's not how I'm living life. And so it gives this inauthentic feeling to where I believe that we need to get back to more of an authentic friendship.
So in your mind, what's the course to accomplish that? Because it's kind of one of those things, like it's really easy to say, but it sounds like, at least in my mind, it's a lot harder to accomplish.
It is, especially in the day and age that we live in. I think that you and I do a good job of one thing that when you and I always do is we FaceTime each other instead of texting.
Yeah.
And I think that's huge. So much of the human language gets lost in the texting.
Oh, absolutely. Like how many times have you texted with somebody? I mean, everybody that's listening knows that feeling. Like you get, somebody sends you a text and all of a sudden you're like, you got that thought in the back of your mind, like, are they upset with me? Like what's going on here? You know?
Jeff leaves me on red all the time. Makes me upset.
In my defense, Thomas sends me a lot of trash that I don't know how to respond to.
That's fair, but I mean, that's totally fair. But he also leaves me on red, which hurts my feelings.
Yeah, I'm not always a great communicator, especially when it comes to text messages.
But we also communicate face to face quite often. I mean, Jeff and I talk every day, literally every day. I don't think there's probably never a day that goes by that, if I'm not out of town, at least, that we don't see each other face to face. Or if he's not in Kansas City, we don't see each other face to face. So that's one. So there's always that build there. The problem is, though, is that we have, as a society, we built friendships through social media.
Yeah.
And the people that you are seeing, they're not actually living the life that they're living, and therefore it creates an inauthentic moment between you two, which is kind of a hard thing to describe, one, but it's hard to actually build a friendship through that.
Yeah, well, and I'm actually going to kind of backtrack to something I said earlier, and that's the whole idea of like that you and I kind of had that commonality when we came together, and we still do outside those things. One of the biggest things we have in common is that we're in a bunch of classes together. So
ton of classes.
We're constantly working on those sorts of things. But I think that raises a really good point. Is that I know a lot of people. I would consider a lot of friends. But I mean, my common interest with them, my commonality with them in general, there is none outside of that. So it's kind of like once that connection dries up, it's like there's really nothing to substantiate a friendship at that point. Like, right. So that commonality is necessary.
It is, and that's a big thing too. That you mentioned we do have common classes together, but I really truly believe even if we didn't have classes together, that we would still and I've said this to you. I know you know this. There have been two people my entire life that, as far as male friendships go, where I have said, you know what, man, like, beyond the time and space that I'm in right now, these are the two friendships I know that are probably going to last me for life. And that's a guy named Sean and you, obviously. And so those are two different aspects, because I believe that the problem is the journey through life is that you find a ton of friends. But I mean, think about that. I'm 30 years old and I have two male friends that I know for sure they're going to be friends for life.
Yeah. And I guess I'm talking more about, like, I wasn't necessarily referencing you and I in that situation, because there are a ton of things that you and I have in common. I mean, we like to read. Yeah. I mean, we honestly, I'm sure this has come up before, but, we were sitting around we'd been shooting the crap for, like, I don't know, an hour one morning. And I was like, hey, we should do a podcast. And Tom's like, oh, I was already planning on doing that. So, but yeah, I mean, we do. I mean, we're both, we're both pretty intellectual guys. We like to, we like to have conversations. We're both really social people too. I mean, you can see that, just in school. I mean,
yeah, definitely.
We kind of have our little group, and it's a good time. I love all those, love everybody. But like I said, my connections with them are much more superficial.
Right.
And and that's not like, I'm not trying to knock anybody really. I'm just saying that, that's what it is. And that's not to say either that, those friendships couldn't eventually grow, but they're just kind of limited by the nature of our commonality in my mind.
Yeah. And so that's, that's a good thing too, is that like realistically though, when I see people, guys or gals, does not matter, right? When I see people with these great, you good? Yeah. With these huge friend groups,
yeah,
you almost automatically know it's not authentic.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? You know it's not, and so there's a piece to it that I truly believe in my lifetime that, and I'm 30. I truly believe in my lifetime that I'll make 5 real friends. I have 2 so far. I have my brothers who I love, and it's weird. This is how I in my head dictate who my 5 real friends will be. It's weird, but this is
let's hear it though.
This is how I think. Best man. I know my brothers are going to be my groomsmen, right? So there's 3.
Yeah.
You made 4 when you came in my life.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And I think there's going to be 1 to 2 more, right? But 1, I'm probably not going to make that connection before I'm married. So I'm cool with where I'm at now.
You plan on getting married soon?
No. But at the rate I'm going, that's 1 every 15 years. I think I'll be married in the next 15 years, maybe. But there is a certain aspect to those we allow in our lives, And the one thing that I have noticed throughout my life is that I have people, Facebook, Instagram, I keep up with a lot of my former soldiers. I talk to a lot of my former guys. I think there is a certain mystique that comes with being a best friend, or a friend for life, because it's so hard to grow as an individual and grow with people.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying? Like that's a total different.
You absolutely make a great point that, people, and I think everybody can probably relate to that people grow at different rates, right. And that definitely affects your friendships, especially like, that's happened to me a lot, multiple times in my life where, you find somebody that you really get along with well, communicate with well, really enjoy being around. But, after a while, there's no growth there. And that I really feel like that aspect of it, it's great and it's important, but there's gotta be some sort of like dynamic change, right? In a positive way for a relationship. Yeah. And it's not all, dynamic change is not always positive either. Every relationship goes through ups and downs, but there has to be that sort of growth. Like I said, I think that's another reason you and I get along so well is like we kind of we're on this same trajectory in life right now with what our goals are for the next 6 to 10 years. So that, I obviously, we've got that in common, and, we're both working to achieve that. So, but like I said, I've definitely had friends that they're great people, but you look and you're like, your life is different than mine.
Totally.
And it's not that you're a bad person, but it's just, there's no future there.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing too, is that like and that's the same with friendship, relationships.
Absolutely,
it's the same across the board. But there's also a bit of a cracking one. There it is. There's also a bit to the point that you can. There are mature relationships, right? As far as a male, female, female, male, binary, what a relationship, no matter what you identify as, there's a relationship pattern for what happens, right? The problem that I think that we have ran into as a society is that and it's more of a male issue. Females you see being a little more, I don't know. They have a weird aspect for how they view their friendships, but they also, I believe, are a lot more open than males with their feelings. At least.
Oh, absolutely. There's absolutely no doubt about that.
Right. So my big thing with that is that I believe that we've gotten to a trap where it's uncommon or fearful or anxiety ridden for men to share feelings or to be vulnerable or to have emotions and to be open. And I think that is incredibly discouraging for young men that we have growing up.
Oh, absolutely. You know, and you know, that kind of, that whole mentality, you know, that breeds the opposite, that we don't know how to be supportive.
Right.
And, you know, that's one of the things like I've personally been trying to, you know, to grow is, you know, be supportive of what my friends are doing, be supportive when, you know, they're going through difficult times. That's one thing that I've actually learned a lot about here this last year, especially with a lot of my younger classmates, is just, you know, learning to support people, learning to encourage people. Yeah. And that's really, I mean, that's a skill that, I mean, pretty much everybody could work on, right?
Well, it is, because I think predominantly most people, whether or not they believe that they're selfless or not, are mostly self-centered. You know, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing either. I think looking out for yourself is not a bad thing because you want the best thing for yourself.
Yeah.
But I will agree with that. You know, one thing that I will say is that having the relationship that I have with you is that it's very easy for me to, outside of a relationship with a female, it's very easy for me to look at you and say, man, this is someone I truly care about as a person. You know, it doesn't matter what you're going through. I'm always like, man, whatever you need to make yourself better, then I'm there for it, you know?
And I don't mean to switch gears on you here, but I really feel like that really transitions into something that we've talked about before too. And that's this idea of like, you know, basically, you know, being competitive, you know,
right.
With your friend group. You can do it in, you know, a very constructive and healthy way. And then, you know, there's a very, I think most people tend to do it in a very kind of unhealthy way, yeah. And I guess very like kind of childish way, like kind of the way, you know, you grew up. Like anybody that's been in high school, they know what that's all about, right?
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. I think that for you and I, at least, that we compete at a very healthy level when it comes to a lot of things that we do. I mean, we lift together. Lift with a T. I'm sorry. I have my braces in, so if I have a lisp, we do not live together. We lift together. You know, we're in most classes together. We talk about food together. We talk
about everything.
We talk about everything together. Yeah. So there is a healthy competition with you and I where it comes to, hey, this is what I'm trying to do, and you're like, hey, this is what I'm trying to do, and there's a support level there.
Oh,
what
absolutely.
You find in most friendships is that there's a unnecessary hate for someone who is doing well.
Yeah, it's what it is it's a competitive spirit, but it's buttressed with, you know, that support, like that, going back to what we were talking about earlier, that, you know, being supportive, being encouraging when it's needed, and
right.
and also, but also, you know, I guess kind of, you know, passing out that tough love when, you know, like I said, I know it's happened to me and you know, since we've met each other, where it's like, hey man, you need to get your stuff in order.
Yeah,
you need to take care of the things you want to take care of, because right now you're not doing it and you're not liking the results. And
right, and the thing is too is that we become so sensitive as a society that it's really hard for someone to do that to another human being.
Yeah,
because immediately when someone tries to correct another individual or help them in that pattern, it's a very victim state. It's a very, you know, why is this person picking at me? Why is this person? And that's something that I believe. I think that's a phase that we're going through. I really think that the victimhood that we're going through right now as a society, because it's huge. It's very much, and it can be on the left, right, whichever political stance you look at. There's a very victimhood thing we're going through, and with friendship, it's the same thing.
No, and I can tell you from, you know, and I don't like to think of myself as that way, but I can tell you, man, when I'm down, when I'm in a bad place, like I am always the victim. Always, like I will tell you, like I always will describe myself as the victim. And that's kind of like, for me, that's kind of like one of those red flags. Like when I start having that thought go through my head, like it's like, yeah, I mean, sometimes you are the victim. Like I'm not saying that's not the case, but I would say more often than not, you're feeling sorry for yourself.
Yeah. There's a self-pity there that has come. I just believe that as a society, we've kind of, and I didn't mean to get off the rail there with what I'm talking about, but as a society, we've become really, really invested with this woe is me attitude. And it has really hit rock bottom when I'm talking about friendships, because it's hard if every time something tragic happens in your life, it's somebody else's fault. That's hard to be around. That's hard to build something around. It's hard to build a relationship around. It's hard to build a friendship around. And so coming back full circle with what I'm talking about is that the victimization and the ability to see through that, I think will really, really pay dividends in the end, because I think it'll make you a better person overall to have a healthier relationship with someone else.
No, absolutely. And I mean, to go, to kind of curve back around, it helps you have I guess fighting and overcoming that victim mentality also helps you have a healthy relationship with your own self. Right. You just, it can't be done. If you constantly are seeing yourself as a victim, basically you're that person that is at the mercy of everyone else, of the universe, whatever. You're never gonna have, I guess, that confidence, the ability to say, hey, my life's in my hands and I'm the one in control of it at the end of the day. And yeah, sometimes there are things outside of your control, but that doesn't mean that when something doesn't go your way, you roll over, act the victim. I guess I like to think of it as when I get in that situation, like that's when it's time to double down and fight even harder.
No, yeah. A lot of people don't see it like that. One of the biggest things I have problems with on campus today is the safe spaces. I have a really, really hard problem with that, just because my train of thought, how I think as a human being, this is just my opinion, is that when you start hiding from things that are hard, it only cripples you later in life. It only hurts you later in life. If things that hurt your feelings or hurt who you are, even if it's a responsible, right? Even if it's a response to something that's actually hurting you, if your first reaction is, I need to hide from this, you're never going to build up from that. You're never going to come out of that, ever.
I mean, that whole idea is that's something. The idea of safe spaces is probably something we could have a whole episode on in and of itself.
I agree. But I'm not talking about just safe spaces or universities. I'm talking about just in general. Yeah. If your first reaction to an issue that pops up is to, hey, I need to hide in my apartment, or hey, I need to hide away from this, you're never going to get through it. Or
bury your head in the sand. You staring at your dog right now?
Yeah, I'm looking at Barrett.
I think he wants to come on the show.
Yeah. So my Siberian Husky and my Pomeranian are here with us. They're all the time wanting to hop on the show.
They'll be getting a producer credit.
Yeah, one day. But I truly believe, though, that to maximize a friendship, to maximize something that you're going through relationship-wise, and a lot of things that I speak on when I talk about just friendships or just relationships are things that I've been through, And so I truly believe to maximize what you're going through and what you're doing is honesty, right? The ability to be transparent with another human being, because that's hard. A lot of people don't like that. A lot of people do not like to be open to the fact that someone else has not even a control, but an ability to see the vulnerable side of them. Nobody likes that.
Well, and not to, and I'm
good.
I'm not disagreeing with you either, but I would say you also have to temper that with like the mentality that there's some things that are not worth discussing. There are some things that are not worth fighting over. There's some things worth just letting go. Right. And I think that that's when you become truly effective at your interpersonal relationships, is when you know where to set that boundary and how to handle that in a healthy way.
Yeah, I mean, how so? Can you expand on that?
I'm just saying that, not every time, like, not every issue that bothers you needs to be discussed. There are some things I know this from my own personal experience that, a lot of times there's something that may be bothering me, and it's just honestly for the sake of yourself, for the sake of the person that you're having the issue with. It's a lot. Sometimes it's just easier to deal with it and forget about it.
Oh yeah,
than it is to like I said, I think you temper that idea of transparency with that. It's also worth picking the fights you have.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, I think too that when I talk about being transparent, I think that there are definitely certain aspects of life that people have the right to privacy on. I do not believe that an entire life should have to be transparent. When I say transparent, though, I mean that there is a key cog in being honest with someone who you're friends with.
Oh, absolutely.
And going through it. And what I've really seen with a lot of times in life is that most people in life are just not honest.
Well, you can't let something that is going to affect your relationship, whether that be, a relationship with a significant other or with a friend, you can't let something that is harming that relationship. You can't just push that down, No,
not at all.
But there's a lot of things that are not, like, I guess I wouldn't say are, going to destroy a relationship that might bother you, that you can just, you can learn to ignore some things, you can learn to live with some things. And I think that's part of a relationship too,
100%. There are certain things, and that's, I believe too, that people don't have, are not equipped, I guess, with the ability to get over annoyances, Yes. I'll put it this way. A lot of, when you look at like domestic violence or like one-on-one friendship fights, if you actually go back and look at like the criminal record of what these people are fighting over, it's like annoyances. It's the craziest stuff. And I don't think that people from childhood are equipped to deal with annoyances in life or know how to deal with it.
We're just, honestly, in a lot of ways, we're really poorly equipped to deal with a lot of things. Mm-hmm. Like, I really do believe that. But the great thing is you really can, like, you can, it's something you learn. It's not something you're born with. You can learn to acquire those interpersonal skills and traits by far. That's a big part of a lot of therapies, is learning to improve your interpersonal skills. And honestly, that's something that, I mean, really a lot of this stuff we should be teaching our kids in school.
Right. No. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not getting started on the education system.
No.
I do 100% agree with that. I think though the problem that we're running into overall in the society that you and I live in, right? Because society in the last 100 years, and we'll even say 200. We'll go with 200 because it's been about 200. Look at the history 200 years ago till now. This by far is the fastest growing in far as, what do you want to call back? 6 generations. This is by far the fastest changing civilization in the last 6 generations than ever before.
Well, I mean, I think that I think that's debatable personally.
Oh, I mean, that's fair, but I'm talking about with technology, industrial revolution, just the ability of the internet.
No, I'm not arguing with that.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think really what you compare, one of the things you really can focus in on is just the ease and the comfort of life in general.
Right.
And it's kind of like, it's kind of like we've lowered our threshold for pain.
Well, we're desensitized to the max, man.
Well, we're desensitized in a lot of ways, but I guess I'm saying the opposite of that. Like that, when you look at like even a couple generations ago, like my grandmother lived through the Great Depression,
right?
And let's just say you throw like people in our generation into that situation, like they
wouldn't last.
Well, that's a whole nother. I'm saying I don't think they'd respond well. I think that humans, we have an ability to suffer far more than we actually recognize.
We've talked about that.
Yeah, we've definitely talked about that as part, being in the military. It's like, hey, your threshold for pain and suffering is like way, way, way past anywhere you possibly think it is.
Yeah, one big thing that I always throw out to people that I think is funny is like when they go out and they're like, "Oh, it's so cold out," and I'm like, It's colder. Like you can deal with what you're going through, That's one big one. I think that the pain threshold, I just don't think what was it we were talking about the other day was human beings in general, were thousands of years ago living in non-heated environments, and they survived. And people today are like, if their power goes out for more than one day, it's like...
If my internet goes out for 15 minutes, I start getting upset.
Yeah, no, and that's...
I'm not going to lie. I literally went home today after we worked out, and I fired up my computer, and for some reason, I got that little, yellow triangle on my internet connection, and I was just like... I was low-key agitated about it.
Yeah, we were watching the Virginia and Auburn game earlier, and for some reason I have AT&T internet, and it decides sometimes that it doesn't want to work, and we're sitting here, and Hulu's like loading, and I'm like losing my mind, and it's little things like that we look back on. Jeff and I look back on sometimes, and we laugh about because we're like, Jesus, like 2,000 years ago, we wouldn't have cared. Well, one, we wouldn't have had the wherewithal to know that was happening. But, in
the interest of full disclosure, neither AT&T or what else did you just say? Hulu. Neither of them are sponsoring us yet.
Yeah. I almost just choked. No, neither one of them are sponsoring us by far. But, that's the thing is that the comfortabilities that we have today, and I'll wrap this back around to friendship, No, because we stray.
We kind of went off.
This is what we do.
It happens.
This is what we do. We stray. But we talk about a lot of things that make us comfortable, right? Society, and that's another thing that's kind of interests me about the friendship aspect. And we've talked about this before too, is that a couple hundred years ago, letters, seeing a person once every 10 years, that was totally normal. Today we live in, I don't want to call it a fake. I don't call it fake. I don't think it's that. I think it's a more personable. I think that you're more upfront. I think that you're face to face with people more. But I think in today's society, we have the ability to see things in people daily that we do not like, that you would not have seen 200 years ago.
Well, and kind of on the shoe on the other foot would be that I think that in a lot of ways we have trouble maintaining friendships when we aren't in constant contact with people as well.
Well, yeah, because we become used to that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like I said, it's funny because like you were saying, you do have those friends that it doesn't matter. You can go 5 years without seeing them, and you're still gonna, as soon as you see them, it's gonna pick right back up.
Right,
and it's the way it always has been and always will be, hopefully.
Right.
But then you have some people that they may be friends, but once you're kind of paths part way, that's kind of the end of it.
And that goes back to growing and changing over time. I have met, being in the military and moving away at 19 and leaving, I have definitely gone back and seen people over time that I hadn't seen in probably a decade,
Yeah.
Especially here in the last couple of years. I've been home a lot more since I've been out and in Kansas and a little closer. And there is a sense for me that, one, these people are still doing the same thing that they were doing when I left. So I'm already not interested in what they're doing. I know that's not a slap in the face, but it's true. And then there are certain people I see where I'm like, man, like, I didn't expect you to grow that way, or I didn't expect you to grow. I expected you to be worse,
Yeah.
And it's funny to me because when I left my hometown, I don't think that I had a ton of acquaintances, but I don't think that I had a ton of friends where I was like, oh, I'm going to miss these people. Never in my life did I ever think that.
Yeah. It's funny. I was actually talking about this. I was out playing some volleyball earlier today, and I was talking with a couple of younger guys, and I was like, this year is my 15-year high school reunion.
You're old.
And I ain't going back because, like, literally I don't know, 8, 9 people that I still care about from high school that I'm still friends with, like, I'm still in contact with them.
Right.
And maybe I'm limiting myself in some way, but I'm just not really interested in delving back into that portion of my life. I feel like it's kind of like, backtracking. I guess.
I don't think you're at all limiting yourself. And I'll say this. So what year is it? It's 2019.
Yeah.
So 2 years ago, 3, one or the other, 2 or 3, we had our 10th.
Well, what year do you graduate in high school, Thomas?
Yeah, I know. It was 3 years ago, 2019. So 3 years ago, geez, we had our 10th anniversary high school reunion, right?
Yeah.
Now, I was in Iraq, but I was added to a Facebook group.
Ah.
Yeah. That was, whatever. And it really set in on me then. I was like, geez, I'm so glad I'm not going back to this, because what's the first thing that pops up? Someone says, hey, we're renting a cabin here. I think I told you about this French dude, Mr. Prima, however you say it.
I don't know, maybe.
He owns, he was, before he passed away, he was like the 7th richest man in the world. I think he owned Prima Steel in France. Well, he bought a part of the Appalachian Mountains, and he put a hunting resort up there named Primlin. And they put a golf course up there that I worked at in high school. And my brother still works up there. My sister, she's a bartender up there while she's going to nursing school. And so they put this golf course, a $19 billion golf course, got all these great cabins. So it's an awesome little place in the middle of Patrick County. And so people said, hey, let's rent a cabin for the 10th anniversary class reunion. Is that what you call them? 10th, not anniversary. What do you call it? The 10th year class reunion.
10 year. Yeah.
Whatever. So one of the guys goes out. I think he's a cop in my county. He goes out. He rents it. Awesome, right? First thing that happens, there's no way we can go to this because we have children. We can't bring children to this. So what ends up happening in my 10th year, they split it in 2 parties. One party has a children's party at D Hart Park and the other one. And I'm just sitting there watching. I'm deployed and I'm sitting there watching this. And I was like, what a shit show. How? And I immediately said to myself, I was like, God, I'm so glad I didn't go back for this. Well, one, I don't even know.
The Army probably wouldn't have let you, right?
Well, yeah, but one, I don't even know who I would have talked. Like, I have a good friend, Sterling, who's a cop in Greensboro, and I would have talked to him. But besides that, I think I would have just stood in the corner with my non-Southern accent and been like, what in the world am I doing?
You may have been surprised by, like, because I think it's true. Like, for every person, honestly, I mean, maybe not every person, but there are a certain amount of people that you will have met that will definitely exceed those expectations that you might have for them.
No, but that's the thing too, is I don't even think it was about exceeding the expectations I had for them. I think that they did not think that I would be in the position I'm in.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of goes back to that whole competition thing and comparing yourself to other people.
And my thing is I don't think that I would ever compare myself to anyone because I just don't think that I care. But I'm from such a small town that they would.
Yeah. Well, you hear these stories like people, going out and renting suits and cars and whatever for their
I would 100%
That's totally, hey, my 20th?
I would 100% rent a Lambo.
My 20th, I'm renting a Lambo, bro. I'm going to be with a little luck, I'm going to be a broke ass med school student at my 20th. And I'm going to live it up again. I'm going to spend every penny I have to make sure I look good at that thing.
With any luck, I'll be living in Italy, not worrying about what happened in the East Coast. I just think that and that's another thing that we could just go down. I'm so glad you brought that up because we have where are we sitting at? We got about 15 more minutes here before we're gonna try to wrap it up. The unhealthy competition of today's capitalistic market when we talk about owning merchandise and what that means.
You're going to have to kick this part off.
I am. But no, I mean, I'm serious about this. I think about this quite often because one thing that really blows my mind is that, and I'm only purely speaking on what you talked about, how crazy is that for, you and I are very, I would say I'm very materialistic, but you and I are very reasonable when we come to talking about lifestyles and what we do, right? How crazy is it that someone rents a suit and rents a car and goes to a class reunion? Think
to
about
impress a bunch of people you don't really even know.
Exactly. Society has put that strain on someone to where they think, hey, I gotta be something I'm not.
Yeah, no. So I used to be friends with a guy when I lived in Louisiana. And it was funny because, him and I would be out, drinking some beers on the weekend or whatever. And one of the things he said one night was he said to me, half the people in here, they're making 50 grand a year and they're living like they make they're living like they make 100.
No, that I think that's everywhere we go, though.
Oh, no, absolutely. And that's the point he was making. And he's actually wasn't even from the U.S., and he lived, he had a good job, lived, modestly. And,
right.
But he makes a great point that's a really big part of our society is the whole idea of keeping up with the Joneses and, presenting yourself in a certain fashion. And, that's a game you can either, choose to buy into or not.
No. And I think that too, though, wraps into when we talk about unhealthy friendships, because when you decide to jump into a friend group like that, and I think it's quite often, I really do believe this. I think it's quite often in today's society, you jump into a place that you're in debt, whether it be school, car, home, whatever. And you decide, I need to have the newest of new. I need to have the new car. I need to have the new clothes. I need to do this. I need to do that, right? It sets you up to where, okay, yeah, for those weekend social media photos, you look great, right? But overall, you're just impressing a lot of people who in 20, 30, 40, 50 years aren't going to be there.
Yeah, that's investing a lot of effort and money and time into something that's very, very fleeting.
Well, do you know how unhealthy that is?
Oh, absolutely, it's unhealthy.
Yeah, it takes you to a point in life where you really wonder where we're sitting at as a society when that is the predominant factor in whether you are part of the culture, I guess. I wear nice things. You know that. And I'm a very what do you call those? Fashionista, right? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I think so.
Sure.
Weirdo.
I know. And I am. I'm very cognizant of what I wear, what I do. Those are nice things. But if you look at my Instagram and you see me in a suit and you think, man, that dude just spent $5,000 on a suit, right? Promise you I didn't.
Yeah.
Promise you that didn't happen. I think that there has become one with name brand. We just talked about this earlier. We were talking about going to Italy. And, you know, one of my big things is going to Italy every summer. I hope to do it for the rest of my life. Probably won't happen, whatever, right? But one of the big things that I love about going abroad is that I like going to older tailors in the cities that I go to and buying a piece from them because I think it's a piece of history. But if you ask the normal individual on the street to name 3 Italian designers, and now Jeff, who is not a big fashion guy, Jeff, if I asked you to name 3 Italian designers, who would you name?
Couldn't do it.
You could. Name one.
Louis Vuitton.
That's one. Name 2.
I don't know.
Gucci.
Yeah, Gucci.
There we go. See? Exactly.
Which was the third one I'd name?
Prada.
Prada, definitely.
Or Dolce Gabbana.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, that's what I'm saying to you. But there is this sense that I have to impress people, which is not true.
I'm glad you didn't really make me answer that because I really felt like I was going to maybe like say something French and sound like a dumbass.
Calvin Klein.
Tommy Hilfiger.
Tommaso Hilfigaro.
Stop.
But there's this sense that to be and that's why when we talk about authentic, you know, Jeff and I can tell you right now that there are definitely things, because we're human, there are definitely things that Jeff and I compete with, right? Whether we do it subconsciously or consciously to each other. But the one thing that Jeff and I don't think that we ever do is I don't think that we judge each other for standards that society has put forth. And that is a real problem with friendships today.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a problem with our society as a whole, that we, you know, the things you have shouldn't define you, right? But they definitely do.
Right. Yeah.
You know, if you're driving that brand new car, or, you know, like you said, wearing the nicest clothes, or, you know, going to the coolest places, that's kind of like, you know, that's how we, I guess, mark success in a lot of ways.
It is. And that's hard too, because you and I do not drive new cars, yet we're probably more successful than the average bear. To ourselves, though. I don't judge my success by far at all by what society has deemed. You know, I've lasted through combat deployments. I've lasted through a divorce. I've lasted through just honestly just making it through a military career, and honestly it is enough for itself. But just being able to be yourself and being happy with what you think is successful. And there's a ton of people that look at you and I and think that, man, these dudes, like, that's where we want to be. I mean, how many times we heard from guys who are 19, 20, 21, and they're like, you know, you're who we look up to. And we're sitting here like, oh, it's dangerous.
That's scary.
That's scary. That's a dangerous path. But it's true. And I honestly think that if I was 20 and I met 30-year-old me and 33-year-old you, I'd be like, yeah, these guys are cool as shit.
Well, where you get yourself into trouble is when you're constantly comparing yourself to other people. You know, you're basically, there's always some, you know, if that's how you measure yourself, you're never ever going to live up, because there's always somebody that's you know, living at a better standard, making more money, doing cooler things. You know, so you really have to measure yourself against yourself.
Well, that it's like that Matthew McConaughey speech. Have you ever seen that?
I probably have.
Where he says, like, the one day somebody asked him who his hero was, and he said, "It's me in 10 years."
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true. But
no, but that I mean, that's a great point, though. Is you know, you have to measure yourself against yourself, and if you are constantly you know, because that's the ultimate marker, right? If you are not making any improvements to yourself, you're not growing as a person, then yeah, you're failing. I mean, yeah, you need to, and that doesn't mean, you have to make more money, but that means, finding ways to make yourself feel, I guess, worthy and, feel like your life's meaningful.
Dude, if you are making 25 grand a year, right? And you're living in an apartment that costs 500 and you have no debt at all, and you're doing what you want to do daily, you're successful.
Well,
because there are plenty of people, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's
there
fine.
Are plenty of people right now who are making 300 grand a year who are in debt up to their necks and are miserable and are cheating on their significant other, and they're not happy, and they're just miserable human beings. And if you look at that and you think that's success, it's not, man.
Well, then you make a great point. And one of the things I have continually said, in the base of the past year since I came back to school is, right now in my adult life, I have less than I've had it at any point since
agreed.
And I know you're in the same
I'm in
place.
the same boat. I mean, I live in a really nice place, but I am by far in the smallest place I have ever lived.
Yeah, I mean, you live, or probably living more modestly than you've lived.
Very modestly, yes.
But it's crazy because right now, despite that, I am more fulfilled
by far
with what I'm doing and where I'm at than I have been at any point in the last 15 years since I graduated high school.
Yeah, by far. I'm 12 years removed from high school, and I am by far the most fulfilled. The thing is, too, is that the things that you and I do, we keep it youthful, man. We stay youthful. I see people that are our age that are drowning, and I think that you and I do a very, very good job of being sincere with one another, which keeps us level-headed, I believe. I don't know. I think that with what we've been through and the path that we've been through, I think it's very different to look back and have a different view on what I believe reality and friendship and relationships mean. And to me, every day waking up, and I joke a lot with a lot of people that are around with me. I'm very a social butterfly-ish kind of person, but being kind, trying at every avenue to help others, and therefore kind of ricocheting or catapulting myself to be better myself has kind of become the forefront of what I've been doing. That's the whole reason we started this.
No, and you make a really good point that whole idea of being empathetic and being kind and being supportive. And now I definitely see this personally in my life, is if you can nurture those traits, right, you're going to find yourself very, very rich in your friendships and in those relationships.
It becomes a lot of selfless kind of things. You have to be able to, that's honestly probably one of the most influential things that we've said here, is because it really will. It enriches your lifestyle to be able to be empathetic, to help others. The biggest thing that I had to take away, and when I started to morph and change into who I was going to be or what I was becoming, whichever you want to look at that, is that, one, I had to really look at things and say, and excuse my language, I had to really look at things and say, man, if I fuck up, that's on me. That is huge. So many people fuck up in life and say, it's your fault. It's your fault. It's somebody else's fault I acted this way. Mm-hmm. And so I had to really look at a lot of things in past relationships, in past moments with my family, in past friendships, and say, I fucked that up. Now, what can I do to be a better person?
Absolutely. And, kind of to tail in on that is, I would say one of my biggest flaws, and it's something I think I've done a really good job of actually changing as I've gotten older.
Right.
Is I was always a very critical person.
I was too.
Critical in a way that wasn't even fair.
I agree with that, and I'm going to let you finish on that, but I wanted to throw this in here. I was the same way. I, for a long time, really, really thought that my opinion was kind of the ultimate apex, if you will. And if you did not agree with my opinion, you were there inherently wrong. And that's such an ignorant way to think about things. And it was hard because I, along the way, put down so many people that probably had some good points, but because it didn't coincide with what I thought, it was wrong.
Absolutely. And kind of going back to what I was saying about being critical and kind of being a cynical person, like that's another aspect of my personality that I still feel like I can work on is being less cynical, being more authentic and genuine. And I, a lot of my friendships suffered for that when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And it's kind of one of those things too, that I was constantly like having that attitude, and I didn't really even but you know what? I wasn't assessing like where I was at, because I was in I am in no position still, to, in most cases, be like that. Yeah. It's right. That whole idea, like you have to have, your things in order, like that's,
I agree.
You need to focus, inward on fixing yourself, because you can't change what other people do.
Well, and that's the thing too. I think that a lot of times we get lost in the fact that we truly, truly believe this. Like I this is one thing that you and I built the podcast on, is that we're two regular guys with opinions, right? That don't matter. Our opinions don't matter. And
maybe yours doesn't.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying? And I mean, I think that's something that the society in general and friendships in general, they've gotten to a point to where it's like, man, if you don't agree with me or you don't think my opinion matters, you're wrong. And my one question to that is, and you see it on the internet all the time, my one question to that is, who authenticated your opinion?
Well, that's the whole point of the internet, right?
Right.
You don't have to do it.
Right. And you and I are very respectful of each other's opinions, but we're also very, hey man, that was dumb. You've told me several times.
Absolutely.
That's a dumb opinion. And I'm like,
I've had plenty of dumb ones myself.
Exactly. So. Right. Exactly. But it's crazy that friendships end over that, or like, or we're sitting here arguing on social media over that. We become a society that believes our opinions matter, and they don't. They don't. You and I are in no position, and I hope people love our podcast. I hope people listen to it and they say, "Man, love those dudes. I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna subscribe." And we appreciate everyone that does. But on the flip side, our opinions don't matter. They're just opinions.
Yeah,
they're not factual. These are just our points of view in life that we go through. And hopefully somebody looks at our opinions and says, you know what? I either want to agree with that, I to disagree with that, but they make a good point, or I empathize with that. That's what we've gotten away from. We don't empathize with opinions anymore. We just say right or wrong. And that's not true.
Yeah. And we don't even bother to think about where that opinion may come from, the place that it, because I don't agree with everybody's opinion.
No, I full-heartedly think that 98% of people are wrong.
Oh, without a doubt. But I guess that's kind of like the beautiful thing, right? Is that we're all entitled to our opinion.
We all come in different shapes and sizes.
And I'll probably tell you it's stupid if it's really stupid, but
yeah. And even then, I mean, you have the ability to look at me and be like, "You're stupid," and I'll say, "It's probably right, man. I'm an ignorant primate. I'm just here, man. I'm living. I'm out here taking mushroom supplements and
supplements, just being a monkey.
Just being a monkey, dude. That's what I do."
All right. Well, hey, you got anything else to add on this?
I want to just say this. This is episode 3 for us. We've got 7 more until we launch, and I just really want to thank everyone who's listening, and I hope you continue to listen. Hope you continue to at least love the effort that we're putting out and love what we're putting out. We're trying to be authentic and trying to be genuine in what we talk about. And we're just hoping we connect with people.
Yeah. And I'm out of stuff to say. So good night.
Good night. Thank you.